I meet this guy who became a mentor to me, and he used to come to the hood, to the projects, to pick me up, like to talk to me about how husbands should treat their wives, how men should stand with integrity and character, how you should be a man of your word, let your yes be yes and your no be no.
A lot of people are misled to think like success is this easy thing or this overnight thing.
I want you to know that you can do anything you put your mind to. I want you to know that you can be everything God called you to be.
Our next guest turned adversity into inspiration. He lost his mother to HIV at the age of 10 years old. Growing up in Brooklyn amidst drug use, violence, and drug abuse, he rose above his circumstances and became a beacon of hope. And get this, he got his dream job and then quit to become a full-time entrepreneur. As of now, he has spoken at over 200 schools, and along with his wife of 20 years, they mentor other couples on how to have a long-lasting, loving relationship. Please welcome my guest, Chino from Brooklyn.
What's up? What's up?
What's good,
How you
brother?
feeling?
I'm well, man. Thank you for coming. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, man. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, in this society, a lot of people have experienced a lot of traumatic events, right?
Yeah.
A lot of depression going on and a lot of mental health issues. So let's get straight into it.
Okay.
How were you able to overcome your mental health, depression, and traumatic events?
Man, I want to say, honestly, like, it's, to me, it's not about overcoming. I think I'm still dealing with that whole process. So overcoming maybe actually is the word. It's more of a lifelong thing. I didn't just fully overcome it. Every day I'm choosing to overcome it, because there's days that come about and I'm like, man, I feel like I'm regressing mentally. And I have to tell myself, like, yo, Chino, like, you not there no more. It's time to, like, literally, like, yo, move forward in your thinking. Apply what you've been teaching and so forth, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not like an event. It's a process.
It's a process, man. It's something like, and you got to be intentional about it. Like, yo, like, I'm feeling this way. This feeling is familiar. This feeling wasn't conducive to my growth back whenever it was. So now I'm like, okay, I recognize it. I can't fall back into that. I got to continue to move forward, keep my eyes forward.
And how did you even develop that insight and that alternative perspective and voice in your head to know that there's another way?
Yeah.
What did you learn? What did you go through to get that mindset of perseverance and growth?
Man, that's a deep question. That's a great question, by the way. My mindset is rooted in my faith. So around the age of 25, I came to this like fork in the road. Life just wasn't good. I'm not 25. I was about 22, 23 years old. And I came to this fork in the road, and I remember just thinking, like, man, is this everything in life? I was in a bad position in life. There was a moment where someone was gonna die or I was gonna die. And I remember just being in a club one day, and I was like, yo, like, I sat down and I just started hearing this voice, and it was like, yo, you're not supposed to be here. And I remember that day because G-Unit was there. For anybody who's in their 40s like me, I was in a club called Exit. It was on 55th between 10th and 11th.
I'm familiar with that.
You're familiar with Exit, right? So I remember just walking in, and like G-Unit was there. That's back when like 50 and G-Unit would pull up with bulletproof vests on. I'm giving you the long story. And I walk in, and the night seemed incredible. I remember I locked eyes with this young lady, and she was coming up to me, and it was almost like it was seductive. So if you back then, the average dude would have been like, yo, it's gonna be a wrap. Like, tonight it's on. I'm sliding, it's good. And I'm with my boys, and I kind of like pushed her off to the side. I'm sitting there, And my man comes up to me and he's like, yo, what's wrong with you? And I'm like, yo, I'm not supposed to be here. And the reason why I told him that is because I started hearing a song that I used to hear in the church back in the day when I was a little kid. And at that moment, it's so funny because there was a reggaeton artist called Tego.
Oh,
he
man.
was on stage that day.
That's the man.
And you know the bangers that he had. And I remember, like, I couldn't hear him. I was hearing this song. And I looked at my man, and he's like, yo, you crazy? And I'm like, yo, I don't belong here. And that's when, like, the whole process started to happen in my life. And I just was like, something, I can't be here. Now, don't get it twisted. I still went back the next week. But that's when everything began. And like I said, my mindset is rooted in my faith. So fast forward, I meet this guy who became a mentor to me. And he used to come to the hood, to the projects, to pick me up, just to show me what fine dining was like to talk to me about how husbands should treat their wives, how men should stand with integrity and character, how you should be a man of your word, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And he began to teach me, not out front, like outright, like I'm going to teach you, but just in his actions and just in our conversation. I'll be speaking to him and he'll catch something that I was saying. And I remember I would tell him like, yo, but I'm a dude from the hood, like you just don't know. And he would tell me, you got to chill with that because your identity is wrapped up in your hood. And he's like, yo, God called you to be something else. God called you to be unique. And at first that was hard for me because I'm from the hood. At first that was hard for me because this is all I know. At first that was hard for me because like, yo, it ain't where you from, it's where you at. This is where I'm at. And but as the conversations continue to flourish, as that relationship continued to build, the trust factor was there. So now I'm leaning into what he has to say because I saw fruit in his life. And that's when my mindset started to shift. So I gave you like the long story, but my mindset started to form like, yo, as a man thinks, so is he. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. And from that moment on, that's when I started to be intentional about becoming the man that I believe like God called me to be.
Indeed. I really appreciate, like you said, that was a long story, but it's the story. Yeah. And here at Raw Success, we like to highlight the process because I think that a lot of people are misled to think like success is this easy thing or this overnight thing. But it's a process of struggle and time and regress and learning and progress. So I really appreciate you taking the time to really highlight the whole thing. So let me ask you, you lost your mother at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Such a tragedy. First and foremost, my condolences.
Thank you, man.
How was that, man? Just, not having your mother at such a young age and her dying so tragically, tell us about that and how you were able to, the word that's coming to my head, I don't know if it's an appropriate word, is to flourish, even with that happening.
Yeah. Yeah,
so forgive me if that's not the right word,
no.
But still to become the man that you are with such a traumatic event, bro. Like you lost your mother.
Yeah.
Tell us about that whole situation and what was your mindset back then? I mean, I know you were a child, but how were you able to flourish even with something so tragic?
Man, it's crazy because like I'm getting emotional.
Yeah, so
I'm 45. Brother.
Yeah.
My mother died 35 years ago. Right? 35 years ago. She was my everything. It was me and her. I remember being in a bedroom with her. We had a one bedroom, me, her, and a couple of my uncles, Bushwick and Borum in Brooklyn. Waking up at 4 a.m. with bricks being thrown through my window. I was screaming, she's grabbing me. My uncles were caught up and, back then the gangs, they run up in your crib, they throw bricks through your windows so that you could come down. That was the 80s. You remember the 80s, Indeed. No joke. And so it was always me and her. So I say that story because I woke up in the same bed, just to give you some context. I remember seeing her just looking for love in all the wrong places. She was with a guy who just didn't treat her right. She was with another dude, smacked her around. And I remember one time my mother was 95 pounds, soaking wet, but her mouth was crazy. It was gangster. She spoke like she was 200 pounds and could beat anybody in the world. And obviously her environment was a big factor in that. And I remember her getting beat up and punched, and I'm just looking at my uncle like, yo, like, what you gonna do? Like, this dude is pounding her out and she's trying to fight, but she can't. She can't beat this man. And my uncle didn't do nothing. You know, I remember that day vividly. And I remember the cops came in, and the cop looked at me. He had a white shirt on. You know, the cops were very different in the 80s than they are today. You know that. And he looked at me, and then he looked at her. And he looked at that man that was beating her. And he said, oh, you want to beat women? I'm going to show you what we do to women beaters. And he looked at one of the officers, because like 5 or 6 of them came in. He said, cuff him. We going to teach him a lesson. And I remember they brought him outside, and I heard that man screaming like if he was giving birth. And I'll never forget that voice and that tone of how it even just sounded, but more like just to emphasize on that, I ran to the window to look out. And I remember being like 5 years old, watching this dude getting beat with nightsticks. You remember when cops like carried them nightsticks?
Indeed.
So they beating him, and I'm looking at my mother, and we watching this, and my mom is just crying. She's conflicted. She's being beat, but there's the man who she claims she loves, and their relationship is so toxic, but she looks at me and she crying more because she knows that it's affecting me. My point is, she's looking at me and crying like, man, my baby is being affected. So fast forward, my mother, this same man, used to go away for days and weeks and come back. And back then in the 80s, drugs infected our communities on the craziest level. Crack hit the community. You know how it is in the 80s. For those of you that don't know, like, there's a show called Snowfall. It will give you a clear depiction of how crack came into our communities when you were black and brown, and how that affected us versus cocaine. But so my mother ends up getting sick, but then she remarries. She remarries a cop, and he takes us like out the hood. But I was already a street kid. I was outside at 5 years old. I was on the block at 5 years old. I wasn't hustling, but I was on the street at 5, 6 years old, 10 o'clock at night. I was outside because my mother her priorities were they were off. She was struggling. It was just her. It was me. It was just a lot. I used to see them cutting up cocaine at 5 years old. I used to see the drugs in my home. They thought I wasn't always watching, but you know, when you're young, man, kids see everything. So, but me and my mother, we were always together. Me and my mother, we were like, it was always me and her. And fast forward, she's married. We out the hood to say, but she's in bed all the time. She's sick. And I'm like, mommy, what's wrong? And she's teaching me how to make coffee because she didn't even have the energy to get up, walk to the kitchen and make coffee. So by the time I was 9, I was making her coffee. I would make her little bread with toast and stuff. And then I go outside. But I didn't, I'm a kid. I don't know what she has. And in the 80s, like, it's not like today, like AIDS people were dropping. You saw them one day, in 3 weeks, you're like, what happened? Yo, they passed. So she ends up dying in 1989. And my life changed in one day. It was drastic. It was like I went from being with her, now I got to move with my dad and his new wife. They were just married maybe about a year. And I knew his new wife because she lived on my block. So while my father, just to give you a little bit of how this love story worked, my father's dropping me off because I used to go be with him on the weekends. But he's dropping me off. He sees this lady walking down the block. Before you know it, boom, he's hollering at her. Boom, they together. 35 years later, they still together. Wow. That's a good story, you know.
Indeed.
But my wife made sure, and my mom, not my wife, my mother made sure in her short time that she made that woman's life miserable. But you know how it is. So anyway, she passes away, man, and true, no lie, like I went from living with her to going to my dad's house with his new wife. He's a new husband, and I can't talk about her. Because everything she represented to my father was negative. Everything she represented to my new stepmother was just negative. So I didn't have anybody to talk to. So from the moment my mother passed away, from that moment, from the age of 10 to about 32, I didn't speak about my mother's death. My wife can attest to that. I didn't speak about my mom passing away. I couldn't bring myself to talk about that. To this day, I never went to visit her stone, her burial, just to give you some context. So it took a long time before and I know I'm talking a lot.
No.
But it took a long time before I was able to start speaking about her death. So I suppressed all those emotions. Man, imagine I'm 12 years old. Now I'm 12 and I'm 13 and I'm called the bad kid. Now I'm 14, 15 and people and teachers, they like, he behaves bad. But nobody ever unpacked why. Because there was a root that wasn't dealt with. There was something on the inside that I just wanted to talk to somebody and say, yo, I miss my mom, man.
And back then, we didn't have the resources they have now when you talk to people and all of that. That didn't exist.
Not at all. And for years, I blamed my father for that. But my father only knew what he knew. My father didn't go to therapy. My father's in his 70s right now. Like, he comes from the school of hard knocks. Them dudes are different. That generation, they different. It's like, I break my whole hand, I'm still going to work, and I'll go to the doctor tomorrow when I'm off.
Never called out in 5 years.
Yeah, that type, right? So they didn't want to sit down with you and say, hey, son, let's talk about how you feel. So I resented my dad, and we could get into that, later. But yeah, we didn't have a good relationship. But I didn't speak about my mother just to give you, just to go back to I didn't speak about her. It affected me in many ways. People were like, man, he's acting bad. I'm in the hood. I'm reckless. My answer to just the normal things was violence. Like, then I'm gonna smack flames out you or whatever. You act up. It's because deep down there was something I didn't know how to. Even my wife now, who was my high school sweetheart, to say my teenage sweetheart, I wasn't the best boyfriend to her. There wasn't, not that I was violent or anything like that, but just from a place of just compassion and understanding.
Yeah, and also you didn't have, I don't know how your stepmother was with you, besides what you explained. You didn't have that feminine, nurturing energy to even cultivate that. And I'm not a man that believes men should tap into their femininity. I'm not into that. Mm-hmm. Men should be and need to be masculine. That's where I come from, right?
I believe that.
However, we are supposed to be taught and nurtured by the feminine energy so that we can reciprocate,
yes,
to our wives and our daughters and whatnot. I always tell people men don't need to tap into their femininity. They just need to discover other aspects of their masculinity.
Yeah. I believe that.
So you grew up around drugs and violence, and if you got sucked into that lifestyle, right? Talk about that and how you were able to get out of that. And if you didn't, how were you able to escape those traps? Like where I'm from and like most of my friends, like including myself, we all have records and and just got caught up in it. Mm-hmm. So how were you to rise above that, those circumstances?
Yeah, it's going to sound crazy, man. I was 10 years old. I'm sleeping on my father's sofa. And because, again, my mom passed away. He wasn't ready for that. He just got married. They got a 1-bedroom, him and his new wife.
Right.
So I'm sleeping on the sofa. And I had a dream. And in my dream, this is going to sound crazy, man. In my dream, I'm walking down an aisle, and at the very end of that aisle was my mother's coffin. And she's laying in that coffin. And I know it's going to sound crazy. But at the same time, I'm watching her. And at the same time, she's right next to me. She's talking to me, and she's like, you got to behave. You got to treat your new mom. Respect her. You got to do good in life. Like, she was telling me these things in my dream. And I remember getting up, screaming, because as she was telling me this, I'm looking forward. And in the dream, she jumps out of her coffin. So maybe it was a nightmare. But there's still some words that she left me with in that dream versus the her jumping up out of the coffin. And it just kind of like stuck with me, like, man, like I got to do good, So there was always like a battle within myself, like good versus evil type of thing. Like, you're not supposed to. So I've done some things in my life that I'm not proud of. But I don't have a record or anything like that. I was never like extremely violent. I remember being at that place where I knew like I may have to be this violent, you just get caught up in the hood and stuff like that. But there was always like this battle, with it. And then I started to I got around some people like my best friend, who's my wife's brother. And man, his family, there was stability in his family. They lived in the projects, but there was love in that family, and there was structure in that family, and there was grace in that family, and there was kindness and gentleness, and it was like, wow, like this is all right. And I started to just gravitate to them. So I'm living in two worlds, you know what I'm saying? But in my mind, and I just believe it's by the grace of God that God kept me from just falling completely off, having me around some people that were like a testament to what I was already kind of like thinking, if that makes sense, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, you did. And, I find it very interesting that you speak about like voices that you heard. Like you spoke about being at Exit and the song. So it's almost like there's something in you that's calling for the best version of yourself. Have you ever thought about, and I know you said that it's your faith, but even at that age when you were younger and you're having these dreams and whatnot, did you ever thought about where that came from? What was the spark of that? Or would you say that it's based on your faith?
Yeah, so back to my mom. My mom was a broken woman. Like, sometimes I think about it, I get choked up. She was broken, bro. Like, Dad, I didn't even know I was going to get emotional.
It's all right. It's
crazy.
It's all right. It's all right. Do your thing, man.
So she dealt with a lot of things, but one day she walked into a church, and she committed herself to Jesus. And that didn't make sense to me as a kid, because I used to run out that church. I didn't want to go. I was like, that's new to me. But I remember her like in worship. No lie, man. But then she'll be home and she'll be facing life, like where it was. But then she'll be in the next Sunday, she's there, and then she'll be home and she'll be cursing me out, But then one day I remember I wasn't, again, just keeping it 1,000%. I was a little boy and I woke up, I couldn't turn my neck to the right. I'm not thinking much of it. I just couldn't turn it to the right. I had like a stiff neck to say. And I remember she took me to church and like they prayed for me. So I go up, they pray for me. I'm walking back to the seat and I turn my neck to the right. And I was like, and that just always like stuck with me. And I never thought about it really past that. But I was like, that's interesting. And I just couldn't believe it. So I was like turning it and turning, like, you're a kid. I'm a kid. So I'm like, yo, this is crazy. We didn't make a big deal about it. Nobody was like, oh, we didn't have the typical church memes. The whole church didn't stand up, start running around. Nobody.
Speaking in tongues.
Nobody did that, because I didn't say nothing, because I was so like taken back. Like, yo, this is crazy. And from that moment on, I just believe like there was a seed planted. From that moment on, I believe that's when God started to just show himself in my life. So when I heard those voices, I knew those voices. I couldn't tell you what those voices were. Like now I can, like, I believe that was just God speaking to me. That was just God saying like, yo, my son, you shouldn't be here, bro. Like, real talk, you shouldn't be here. I got more for you. Yeah. So I think that's where it started. That's my memory. So you taking me back, man, because that's my memory. Crazy. I haven't thought about that in a minute.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fast forward, you're a young man, you're viewing life, you're coming from this life. You mentioned a mentor, right?
Yeah.
Which by the way, I want to say, man, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that the art of mentorship is something that should be promoted more. And I feel like not enough people are doing it. It's almost like, and I get it, we're all busy. we're all busy. Everybody's, struggling. Everybody's or hustling, right? You're struggling and hustling or both. But the importance of mentorship and leading the generation before us is such a crucial thing. I also give credit to a lot of my personal development to older brothers in the hood that just took their time to drop some gems. And so I noticed that you work with men now, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the message that your message is centered around is men's empowerment.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you think that your experience led you to bring that message? Or, well, let me just ask, what led you to the message of men's empowerment?
I think it's more so the message to me is more a message of hope. And so it's so broad, right? Like hope. But when we bring it to men, yeah, it's that message of empowering men to know that their story doesn't have to end with their current circumstance. They don't have to fall victim to what they see or what they're going through, because the reality is, man, like men, it's a different time right now, but men, we suffer in silence a lot. Because I heard 50 Cent say something, and I don't know how controversial this is going to be, but 50 said something crazy one time in an interview. He said depression can sometimes be a luxury. I don't know if you ever heard it. And he said, because when you grow up the way we grew up, you still got to go to work the next day.
You didn't have the luxury to be depressed.
Like, you still have to you can't just go to a place for the next few weeks and fall back because you have maybe a trust or something that's still paying your bills. So I thought that was powerful, that statement. I know we can chop that up, but when you think about it, like you said, you just got to continue to do life. And if the resources aren't there, and if you're not around the right group of people, then you can easily fall. Like, depression can lead down so many roads. So when it comes to men being empowered, man, I want to make sure that men are empowered to know, man, like they can do all things. They can continue to persevere despite what they've gone through, despite what they're going through. They can continue to push forward, and they can continue to fight. And just not just them, but knowing that they have somebody that's on their side with them. Just the same way there's somebody just the same way a boxer has somebody in his corner. Just the same way that dude playing baseball has a coach, has some sort of trainer. Like, man, like we should be there to walk alongside of somebody. Because mentorship is not just about, every time you pick up the phone, I'm talking to you. That's a part of it. But am I going to do life with you? Am I going to make sure that I'm accountable to you? Can we have deep conversations without judgment? Can you just not tell me I'm doing something wrong? Can we have a conversation so that I could see a different perspective? Because sometimes as a man, you doing what you believe is right and true, and you only know what you know. But when you have a mentor and he's coaching you and he loves you, man, he'll come alongside of you and say, like you see it this way, but what about if you look at it from this lens? Boom. Oh, all right, let's keep moving forward. I feel you. I'm teachable. I'm coachable. And again, a mentor, I get the title, right? But mentors, we go through things too.
Indeed.
So we pouring into you while we still navigating through life. That's real right there. But you use the word leader, and I love John Maxwell. He's one of my favorite leaders because he has this quote: a leader knows the way, a leader goes the way, and a leader shows the way. That's what a mentor does, man.
Indeed.
That's exactly what a mentor is supposed to do. So
I want you to look at the camera, and I know you've spoken over 200 schools, so your message is thorough. It has a lot in it. But if you can briefly say like your core message to those that are watching, what would that message be?
Yeah, so for those that are watching, like my core message is a message of hope. And I believe that that's been instilled in me. And I believe God put that in my heart so that whoever I come around, if whoever is in my circle, whoever's within my perimeter, like, man, the message is hope. Like, you can continue to move forward in life no matter what you face. You can continue to persevere no matter what you're going through. You might be going through a divorce, but yo, you know what? That happened is happening, but man, what are you doing to move forward? Because the way I look at it is, as a man thinks, or as a woman thinks, so is he, so is she. So the message of hope comes from a place of like, yo, I know it doesn't look good, but there's so many reasons why it's going to get better. So I want you to know that you could do anything you put your mind to. I want you to know that you can be everything God called you to be. I want you to know that greatness is locked up on the inside of you. And when there's greatness locked up on the inside of you, there's always going to be something around you that's going to try to suppress that thing on the inside of you. But what if you could just unlock it for a moment? That message of hope, oof. Because you can't have faith without having some hope. I learned that like 3 weeks ago. So that glimpse of hope can set you up for a lifetime of fruit. And that's my message.
What's the difference between faith and hope?
So I believe faith, according to what I know, is believing in something that you can't see and believing in your heart that it's going to come to pass. And I know we use, many people say, yo, you can manifest things. I believe that's a truth. And hope is just saying, hey, you know what? Like, it's almost like the same thing, but hope is like, you know what? I'm hopeful. Like, I'm at that place where it's like, yeah, I believe. And that's just, they walk hand in hand. How can two walk unless they agree? They walk hand in hand.
Indeed. So you came from the projects amidst drug use, violence, domestic abuse, and just everything that comes with being in the hood, right? And then you end up with your dream job.
Yeah.
You end up going to corporate. Right. Bro, that's like, to some people, could be unfathomable. How were you able to accomplish that? And then, part two of the question, you quit to become an entrepreneur. Are you crazy? Like, my mother would tell you, like, are you insane? Like, you made it. You made it. You got the corporate job. First of all, you escaped the hood, right?
Yeah.
You got the corporate job. And you're going to be a crazy entrepreneur?
Yeah.
So walk us through that process, right? So this, the first one is being able to even accomplish that is big. And listen, our audience is broad. And for some people, it may not be a big thing, but I come from the same community you come from. So for me, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And you being able to do that within itself is hope. Gives me hope.
Yeah.
And it'll give others hope. I was on the block last night. When they hear this message, like, oh man, my man come from a similar place I come from. He made it to corporate. Maybe I can too. Yeah. So walk us through that, right? Being able to do that, your mindset, you don't have to get to the specifics, but the mindsets that we can, the mindset and the tools that we can use.
Yeah.
And then you quit.
All right. Yeah. So, wow, that I'm going to keep the story short because it's long, because it's an 18-year run in corporate America. So I will say this, it started with, I was a blue collar where I had a blue collar job. I used to work for DHL. I was actually supposed to be on the 100th floor during 9/11 on the 100th floor of the World Trade Center. That was my route. And so fast forward, I get married. I was still a blue collar employee. I used to work for Local 3, the electricians union. I was a driver for them. And my wife was just decided not to. I remember that she was supposed to be with the FBI. She used to work for the government. And she's always done well. She was doing school and everything. And I always would be like, man, I was really like encouraged by that. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to keep it real. I was really encouraged by that. And I end up losing my job during like the 2008 crash. And from that moment, I was like, man, what am I going to do? So I end up working at a church. So that was like my intro to like admin work and stuff like that. And I wasn't supposed to get the job because I didn't have a bachelor's degree. By the way, I forgot to mention, I dropped out of high school. I left my father's house when I was 16 years old, May 30th. I'll never forget. Called his bluff. He was like, don't come home if you're not going to be home by 1 a.m. And I was like, bro, I'm going to this party. And he was like, then you don't live here no more. I come back. He was like, you don't live here no more. And I left. Never went back home after that. So I'm with my wife, boom. And I get this job. I'm at a church. This lady said, I just see something inside of you. It was like a multi-million-dollar church, like in Manhattan. And she was like, I just see something in you. And she started to like pour into me. And she would say, hey, write this email to this person. And then I would say, okay, don't send it. I want to read it. All right. I'm teachable. So I'm like, okay. And she's like, why'd you use and there? So she's teaching me. I don't even realize. And I'm like, why not use however? And so at least 2 or 3 times a week. Before I knew it, I was sending out emails and, whatever, boom. Fast forward, they had the recession hit or whatever. I end up losing my job. And now I end up at a corporate office. I'm in a mailroom for an organization called Rico. And I'm there and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I'm delivering mail and I'm doing what I have to do. I'm freshly married, a few years in. And I get this opportunity to interview at Google for an IT position. I don't know too much about IT at the time, but I'm fairly savvy. Like Mac was really like exploding. So I go to this interview on my lunch break and the guy tells me, hey, we just started, this department just started, help desk. I'm going to give you a shot. I was like, bet. I wasn't that excited. It's funny though, Shaggy was in the lobby. I kid you not. But
the reggae artist?
Literally. The day of my interview. So I wasn't that excited, but I'm like, oh, snap, Shaggy's here. Like, I didn't want to fan out, though, because it was my interview. I was like, oh, let me not be that guy right now, But there was he's impacted culture. Like, let's keep it real. So, but I do the interview. He gives me a shot, and boom, I hit the ground running. I end up at, they used to call us L0. That's help desk, like ground floor. And I just started working my way up. By the time a year came, I was the supervisor. By the time 2 years came, I moved teams. I transitioned.
Quick question. Don't lose your thought. So you started off in a mailroom. What gave you the courage to apply to that other position? And the reason why I ask is it's sort of personal because where I was working at, I've seen other positions. I've seen that there was an option to apply to other positions, and I immediately just like, yo, I'm not going to get that. I don't have the degree or I don't have the experience. You know what I mean? So what gave you the courage or even the confidence? Yeah, both courage and confidence to even apply.
Having 2 kids under 5 years old. Like, I had to hustle. Like, I always been a hustler. Like, I don't know. I never felt restricted in any way. It's so weird. Man, thank God for that, because I be in my own head a lot. But I didn't feel that. I felt like I was equipped. Like I was that guy. Put me in the room with somebody in an interview. I got it, because they're gonna get to know me. Yeah. And I did have that confidence. It borderline arrogance a little bit in my immaturity, but so I just would go for it.
So I want to highlight a few things. So this is called raw success. So within the few things that you were said, you mentioned how you're teachable and coachable, which is an important aspect that I've also realized in other successful people. It's a willingness to learn, and it's funny because you mentioned that you were confident, borderline arrogant, but you knew when to be coachable.
Yes.
So you used that confidence as a tool when there was time. It seems like when it was appropriate, like, okay, this is the time to use the confidence. Does that sound pretty?
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
Do you self-reflect?
I do. I think it's one of my biggest essentials to my growth.
I think that's why we so connected. I've been that guy who self-reflects. I can't even remember from when I was like a teenager. And that's part of it too. Like I would self-reflect a lot. So like if I'm at work and I'm crushing it, I'll be like, why am I crushing it? What am I doing? When I didn't feel like I was crushing it, why am I not crushing it? Why am I coming to work on time when I could be here 15 minutes? Like I talk a lot. Are you a self-talker?
All the time.
Bro, I talk a lot to myself.
I'm also an auditory learner too.
Oh, so
that's
am
how
I.
I learned the
so
best.
am I. Me too.
Yeah.
Visually, auditory.
Yeah.
Me too. So I'm in this position, and within a year and a half, I remember my boss walked into my conference room with a table just like this, and there were 5 of us. Real talk, there were 5 of us there. There were 5. 3 of them had their bachelors and were going on to become engineers. They were just in this mailroom because they needed their foot in the door at Google. Me and my man were there. He's my man to this day, but I remember my boss said, hey, I need somebody to manage our assets, manage all of inventory for Google. Nobody wanted to do that. That's beneath them. They're going to school. They're finishing school. And he was like, he didn't want to like choose somebody. I said, I'll do it. I'm just happy to be at Google. I go in, I start managing the room. I start networking with people, because when you manage assets or inventory, if you need an iPad or something, you got to come see me. Every single person in that building has to see me. So I said, bet, I'm going to leverage this because I'm personable. I like being around people. And what I did was I created a system within that saved Google $11,000 in its first month. And I don't want to get into all the details, but by month 6, they were $1 million plus. So that put me on the map. Within 3 years, I was managing the entire East Coast on another team. Wow. And then within 4 years or 5 years, my wife is much better with dates than I am. 5-6 years, I was on the YouTube TV team, and I was the guy who led the initiative for building out the infrastructure so that we could have YouTube TV. In fact, I'm one of the guys that hit the play button in March of 2017.
Wow, there's so many gems that I really hope our audience is picking up, and I want to highlight a few things. So, teachable, willingness to take the risk, right? Using confidence as a tool when it was appropriate, and also willing to start from the bottom.
Yeah.
Willing to work your way up, and then doing the work in a supreme way to the point where you get noticed. So you see, this is not an overnight thing, because, you know, somebody like who doesn't know you may say, oh, he's lucky.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No, my man started in the mailroom.
Yeah.
And then rolled the dice.
Yeah.
And then did his job well. Yeah. So this is what we want to highlight at Raw Success.
My wife could tell you this. I used to go to work for weeks and months on end. I would be at the Google facility by 5 in the morning. I lived in Staten Island. I would have to get on a bus. She could tell you, 5:30 in the morning, I was already at work.
And what time did you have to start?
8.
Something else I noticed too. Successful people respect time.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're structured in that way. I'm the same way, by the way.
8. I used to, because I knew I had to do this job and I wanted to do it with excellence. So it was a job that was going to position me to get to, just to leverage myself, because most people think, oh, give me a raise. No, but you can't just get a raise. You got to add value. Everybody's going to get a raise every year. It's called an annual raise. I became a regional account manager. I could tell you. So you think, oh, I want a raise. And granted, if you put it in the 12 months there, yeah, you get your annual 1 to 3% at most. And I'm getting a little technical here, but I just want to speak manager talk for a minute, right?
Yeah. Let them know you're qualified to speak the way you do.
Yeah. So, so in order to get that raise, that the money that's going to give you satisfaction, because when somebody gets 1 to 2%, they're like, oh, all I got is 59 cents. Well, across the board, according to budget, yeah, that's what you get, right? But when you add value, you get a promotion. And that's when the money comes. That's when the significant change happens. You go from making $20 an hour to $30. You see a $10 raise will change where you eat, my brother.
Indeed.
Real talk. So then within 6-7 years, I was getting those types of raises. And I remember looking at my wife one time, and we looked at each other like, yo, babe. She's like, yo, this joint looked like an income tax check. It was just a regular check. And we were like, we were so excited. And from that moment on, our money changed. It did. I'm not going to lie. Our money changed. But we didn't know how to manage that. And that's a whole nother story. We could talk about that. But we didn't know how to manage that type of money. It came in, I bought more Jordans. It came in, we bought more designer. It came in, we bought better cars. You know what I'm saying? Indeed. But that's a whole nother, So I just want to be vulnerable and transparent because success, part of being successful, man, is failing.
Learning from
you gotta learn. Yeah. So I kept moving on. Eventually, I lost my job at Google. They cut my department, just like that. Corporate America, you the highlight. You up here, but money gets lost in a certain area. They'll cut your department in a heartbeat. And the people that go first are the people that are making. And we were making fairly high six figures. I was making fairly high six-figure salary, but then I ended up at Facebook. During the time when the acquisition was happening for Instagram. So I got to see Facebook and Instagram coming together. That was cool. I stood there for about a year or so. I wasn't too fond of the environment. And then I had an opportunity to work for Amazon corporate as a customer service manager. Regional. I was a regional manager pretty much for New York, New Jersey, Chicago, and Minnesota.
Wow. And then you quit. I don't know if there wasn't right in that moment, but let's talk about now. You talk about confidence. Woo! Worked so hard. And like I said, you made it. To us, where we come from, you made it. Top tier. Yeah. And then you decide to become an entrepreneur. Tell us about that.
Okay. Technically, I didn't quit. My department was cut. Because this is a crazy world. Like, the people who get cut are the managers. Remember. So now I transitioned out of Amazon into another company because they offered me some. I felt like with this organization, I could really understand and learn the financials. I've always been a great people manager and I loved operations and stuff like that. But I'm just trying to give you a little bit of context.
Indeed.
So now I'm managing a $40 million portfolio. And I'm managing 150 people, but it became less about the people. And I like the people part because I get to empower people and bring that next manager up. And it was more about the finances. And letting go of somebody that makes six figures is not an easy thing. I've terminated a ton of people in my career. And I'm not proud of that. I'm just saying people fired themselves pretty much. I've never but that's not an easy thing. Like, saying, hey, your services, unfortunately, we have to let you go. And it's because of a decision that somebody else made. It's not a good thing. So after that, I was offered a position, six figures. And I remember I'm in an interview remotely. And my wife is in the background. And the guy tells me, hey, man, a check is a check. But by this time, I'm doing life insurance on the side. And my wife kind of gave me the eye, and she said, at that moment, I knew you weren't going to take it. And I said, I'm not going to take this position, and I'm going to bet on myself in my 40s, which is extremely scary. But I bet on myself, and I took my part-time hustle to save business, which was life insurance. I'm a life insurance agent alongside of my wife. We're licensed in 50 states, nationwide. I'm a broker, so I represent multiple carriers. And I just said, hey, I'm going to go full-time on that. And that's how I transitioned into full-time entrepreneur. So we started our agency, and right now that's where I'm at. Wow. Teaching financial literacy. So I take those tools and I also teach financial literacy.
Wow. I want to press rewind. I want to continue here. We're going to put a little mark here, pressure a little bit of rewind. You mentioned bringing value to the company, and also you mentioned excellence. Mm-hmm. Speak more about that mindset, and also showing up on time and things of that nature. Speak more about that mindset and how our listeners can adopt that type of mindset.
Yeah. So just for the sake of just keeping it pretty, in layman's term, no disrespect, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of all the managerial talk, right? But there is a clear distinction between manager and leader. They play around together, but management Manager is the science, right? Leadership is like the art, but you got to mesh them together in order to be successful in the corporate world. If you have those two, let me backtrack. You can be successful and just be a manager. You can be successful and just be a leader. But when you merge the both of them, like, you understand leadership, dude, you flying. Because people see the passion that you have when I communicate with conviction, and I'm like, I buy into this thing, so I want to operate with excellence. So when it comes to just saying, hey, how do you add value? If you're someone who's in a job and you're like, man, I don't like it. If you're constantly speaking negative about it, it's going to be really hard for you to move forward. It's going to be hard for you to shine. It's going to be hard for you to stand out, because you may be in a position, like maybe you're in a mailroom, right? And you're thinking, oh, this kind of sucks. But what if you flip that way of thinking and say, hey, man, how can we distribute mail in a way that's seamless, or maybe in a way where we can scale it down so that everybody can have a few more moments to just kind of chill, just little areas, like, how can I make this thing better? And not feeling like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do it. Oh, nobody's going to listen to me, because that's victim talk, right? But what about if you took the attitude, and to me, man, attitude determines altitude, right? So what about if you take, as somebody, you're an employee, and you may be thinking, man, but I'm never going to. Maybe that's your language. That shouldn't be your language. Because the reality is, man, I used to sit in corporate offices, and sometimes I'll take pictures on the low. I'm going to keep it real. Like, yo, I can't. And I would send them to my mentor. I'll be like, yo, I can't believe I'm in the room with these people. Because there would be times like I'll be like, man, am I even qualified to be here? And then, you learn how to code switch. So if I'm in the hood, I'm like, yo, what's good, homie? We good? Like, yo, what up? But when I'm in that office, I'm like, hey, how you doing, sir? Nice to meet you. Look you in your eyes, shake your hand. I ain't dapping you in the corporate office, right? And I could easily take the approach of, this is who I am. No. You got to know where you at, because you can't come to my house and be who you want to be. I'm going to check you real quick. Vice versa. We know that, right? There's respect. That's not a yo, you ain't keeping it real. Nah, man, I'm just maturing. I know where I'm at. I'm not going to change my principles. I'm not compromising that. So when I'm giving you the long answer, because it's important, like, if you're in a position, you find a way where you can add value. It might not come right away, but adding value will bring promotion. Would you rather have a 2% raise, or would you rather have a 15% raise that comes through a promotion? Rhetorical, I get it. We all know we want 15%, because that's the difference maker, where you eat, your next apartment, the sneakers or whatever that you buy your kids, more savings, whatever it is that you choose to do. But think about it, man. Adding value is key. And when you add value, people take notice.
Yeah, and I think that, and I love how you broke it down in a corporate world. I believe and think and have experienced that applies to all things. Wherever you add value, your life will promote you, period.
True. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. You can't be cool, good here and not here. Like, no, we're human. We have habits and disciplines and all that stuff. So I can't be really dope here and not dope here. It's weird. Like, there's sometimes I get around people, they don't understand how principles transcend. Think about it. If I'm dope at delivering mail, I could be really good at data entry. Like, it's mindset. And I know we've spoken of mindset is key, man. Mindset is key. Like, we all get nervous. We all get scared. We all have insecurities. I've been nervous. I've sat in rooms where I'm like a little nervous, but I didn't allow fear to grip me. I wouldn't allow it to. And the way I did not allow it to grip me, I was self-talk. Nah, man, don't allow fear to overcome you. I would be talking to myself. I'll give you a practical example. I remember being fearful in a corporate office. I was at Google. I was with one of my managers. And I was nervous because at that time there's this thing called Link NYC. They replace phone booths with these devices. You've seen them? They look like these digital devices. Mm-hmm. They're all over the city. Back in the days we have phone booths. Now they have these. So I was a part of that project, that initiative. So that went citywide. And I remember being with my manager at the time, and I said, hey, her name was Meg. I said, Meg, like, how do you know all this? Because I was nervous because one wrong move, we could have cut down like the internet of the whole city. And she said, because I got people like you. And I thought that was weird. She said, I surround myself with people who are better than me because I never want to be the smartest person in the room. Light bulb. I never thought it through like that, but I started to apply it to my everyday life. So now I'm a regional account manager in the corporate world. And I'm taking this young girl from the mailroom and I'm like, hey, I'm going to bring you into a monthly meeting with me. She just came out of like college or high school. And then I'm bringing in this elder gentleman who's been in the industry for 30 years, but he's not at my level. He's somewhere. And I'm bringing all these minds together. And I'm not the smartest person in the room, but what I do understand is how we come together and we can elevate and do great things in an organization. And what that did for me when I was at Amazon corporate is it allowed me to really like stand out, and my team became like the number one team.
Wow. You mentioned attitude. What was the quote you said?
Attitude determines altitude.
Break that down.
Yeah. So just to kind of give you like insight to that, man, if I'm in a role, like whether it be in the corporate world or maybe even in my home with my wife, I could easily feel like I'm the man, I got this. Or I could take the posture of, man, things are always going to be down and out. But what if my attitude or perspective was, yo, I know I'm facing this right now, but let me switch the way I'm thinking real quick. Let me have an attitude of gratitude to say, so that I can approach this with a clear mind so that I can come out of it. So when I speak about that, I'm telling you, I'm speaking about that in general because it's applicable to everything. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. I can't have a dope attitude here and not have one here, bro.
That's right. It's a universal perspective.
Now, do I battle? Yeah. Do I battle with them? Like, do I feel really equipped in one area? Yeah. Yo, put me in a room to speak to 100 students. I feel like I could do this, right? Put me in a room to speak to men, businessmen and women. I'm going to be nervous. But again, it's okay to be nervous. It's just not okay to allow fear to grip you. Because if I'm in that position, if I'm even near that position, that means I'm equipped to be there.
Indeed. I love it. I love it. What has been some of your challenges as an entrepreneur?
Shoot. I think the biggest one was the people who I thought were going to believe in me didn't. That was a tough one. That, you know, you only learn as you go, right? In life, man, you live, you learn. So I thought I was going to have a bunch of just people cheering for me in the beginning, and that just wasn't the case. And that's not a knock to them. I didn't have credibility. So I went from the corporate guy, Chino, who was at Google, Chino, who was at Facebook, Chino, the plug, help people get jobs, Chino, who's at Amazon corporate, to Chino, the life insurance agent, Chino, the financial literacy dude. Everybody's like, wait a minute, they confused. Now, they're not telling me that, but my onset was, I felt like I had the blueprint. I said, yo, I'm going to help my whole community. This is where we at with money. And I just dove head deep. And it just, that was my biggest challenge. And I had to get past that. And that took a little while. I'm not going to lie, maybe about a little over a year before I was able to really handle and manage the emotions that brought on. Because I was parked in that for a minute.
You know, it's interesting. I think it's universal because I can tell you that even with some of the things that I've done and that I'm doing, people who I thought were, I don't like to use the word support, so I'm just going to say people who I thought would be willing to invest. And when I say invest, not just give me money, I'm talking about like purchase things, all right, or in some aspects supported in some type of way, they weren't there. And then the people that I didn't, or people that did invest or support, some of those people, like, I was totally shocked, like didn't even notice or didn't even know that they knew, so that they were even watching or paying attention. And so I've definitely, and that seems to be like a universal thing. Yeah. I don't know what it is about that. But what drove you to get into the life insurance business? So why that specifically?
Early on during the pandemic, I used to sit at Facebook, and again, weird. I just was like, man, I don't belong here. There's more. And I started watching a guy by the name of Patrick Bet-David, PBD, back in 2017, 18. And I just would watch his videos and stuff. And I would call my wife like, oh, I don't belong here. And it's hard because when you're at a company like that, like free lunch, free breakfast, you ain't paying for nothing. The perks are incredible. The pay is good. But I was like, man, I don't belong here. There got to be more. And fast forward that summer in about 2020, I remember my brother-in-law, he was like, Chino, we were out on vacation, and he was sitting by the pool, and he said, what do you want to do? And I said, I just want to serve people, man. But I want to make money while doing it, because before then I was speaking a lot, but I wasn't charging, because I always was like, man, I have a job already. Like, I'll just come do it for free. It's nothing. And I was like, but I just want to make sure that I make money because I have to provide for my family. And after that, I end up meeting Patrick Bet-David's sister. And once I introduced her to my wife, it was a wrap. Everybody loves my wife. She's just dope. And they hit it off. We hit it off. She started talking to me and showing me about how wealthy people leverage and use life insurance as a foundation. And I couldn't believe it because I said, I never, ever heard of this. And she said, of course. Middle America and people in poverty, they don't get this info. She said, look up how the Rockefellers do it. I'm a research guy. What? They got 80% of their money in life insurance? Look up how Ray Kroc, founder of McDonald's, took a loan against his life insurance, and now we have McDonald's, Walt Disney. And I'm just like, oh, she put me on. I studied for my life insurance test. While I was working on the side, I was doing it. And I started to scale back from leadership in the corporate office because I was like, I'm an all-in guy. I can't give you 50 and give this. I'm an all-in guy. So I scaled back a little. I built out a team, and I had the team running the business. Now they're going to, if they hear this, they're going to know now, but I had the team running it while I was studying and doing what I had to do. And my wife pretty much did the same thing. She was studying. She took the test. We got licensed, and we just started serving families. Within the first year and a half, we served 100 families.
Wow. You keep bringing up this amazing woman, your wife.
Yeah.
And she's in the studio right now. Yo, let's get her a mic in the chair right now. Let's meet who this amazing woman is. Yeah. Welcome to the show, Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing, just hearing Chino speak so highly of you and just the partnership that you both share. And I definitely want to get into the marriage mentorship or counseling that you do. I want to ask you a couple more questions about the business that you operate. In terms of life insurance, unfortunately, I've noticed, and I have to be really transparent, I'm one of them. I don't have life insurance, right? It seems that it's a confusing thing. Number one, I think that a lot of us are not sure what type of life insurance, and also at what age should we get life insurance? And I think that some of us also think that it's a scam. You know what I mean? And not that it's a scam like somebody trying to get you, but just are not sure, of a trusted source or company, So with that being said, first let's start off with asking, at what age should someone consider getting life insurance?
I would say when they're born. 2 weeks after they're born, they receive their Social Security, and that's how you do it. And I say that because if you know who the Rockefellers are, every time a grandchild is born, they put a life insurance policy on that grandchild. And that money continues every time the next person passes away. There's millions of dollars being funneled down generationally.
Wow. That's amazing. I never heard of that.
Yeah, so my youngest client is 1 year old, about to be 2. So by the time that child is 24 years old, that child is going to have upwards of, in cash value, between 20 and 30,000 tax free. They can pay for school or use some of that money to pay for school, or that's the money that they have to invest maybe in a business or real estate, wherever the parent feels, that child is at.
Okay. And I know that there's different types. I know there's like term life, and I'm really ignorant when it comes to that. So I don't know. I just know that there's different types.
Yeah.
Which type do you suggest or advise someone gets?
Yeah. So I suggest that you get the type that is right for you. And I know that that's a general statement, but you're right. There's a few types. There's 2 types pretty much. There's term. That just means temporary, either 10, 15, 20, or 30 years. And that means it has an expiration date. And then there's a permanent policy, and that policy will last you all the way to, the day you leave this earth, right? And there's a guarantee, because we are all going to leave this earth one day. Or 120 years old, whichever comes first, So pretty much, again, there's 2. Term, that means that it's going to expire either in 10, 15, 20, or 30 years, or permanent, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. And what most people think is like life insurance is for when you die. And there's a truth in that, but that's not totally true. You can leverage life insurance, a permanent policy, whether you choose a whole life or an index universal life insurance. You can leverage the cash that you're growing in that in real time to buy, put it down on a property or something that's going to appreciate and not depreciate. That's my recommendation. And that comes with the death benefit. God forbid you pass away. Also, life insurance has another perk that I will call it a perk. It has something called living benefits, living benefits. And what that means is, God forbid you have you get cancer. We never know, like anything can happen. God forbid you have cancer. You get 80% of that money up front in real time. So if you need a specialist, you need to go to a doctor, you choose NYU. That's not free, but at least you have up to 80% of that money in real time up front.
Wow. Why do you think so many, I'm including myself in the conversation, and I want to say that it's irresponsible for me not to have life insurance, because I have a family, I have 5 children, and so I definitely need to get on it. Why do you think so many of us don't get life insurance or don't trust life insurance?
Yeah, I think because we only know what we know, right? So like my parents came here. My parents were like, work, get a job. And build out a 401k. This is not an attack on a 401k, but the average person doesn't even understand what's in their 401k. They don't understand the fees that are applied to that. They don't understand that 401k is just a tax code. That means it's going to get taxed. It's tax deferred. It's going to get taxed later on. It looks like taxes are growing or or increasing. So you're going to tax my money later on at a higher tax bracket. Let's say that, like, I'm about to retire. Let's say I'm about to retire. So now this 401k, let's say I have 500,000. Now that's going to get taxed at what, 30%? And then, am I going to outlive that? The average person right now is living to the age of 79 years old. That's real-time statistics. So if you retire at 65, is 300, 400,000 going to sustain you for the rest of your life? Probably not. So most people don't know because, and I say, use the word us, like I think our people don't know because we just weren't taught. Because I've been in communities of people who they do know. They don't look like us, but they know. And that's just, it's more of a learning, learning thing to say, right? So yeah, it's just a long answer.
I want to say I appreciate everything you're saying, and with the next question that I'm about to ask, I appreciate you being transparent of some of the mistakes that you've made. With that being said, you now host financial literacy, or you teach financial literacy?
We do, yeah.
Okay. And earlier you mentioned you made some mistakes. So to me, I don't hold that against you, because that just lets me know you know what to do and what not to do.
Yeah.
Right? So tell us about Well, I would say, what basic financial tips can you offer our audience? And what I'm thinking is person my age, right? And also I'm thinking about my 18-year-old son, my 19-year-old daughter, 25-year-old daughter, right? If you can come from that space as early as that, and also as present as middle-aged adults.
Yeah. So I guess what I would say is, for someone who's in their 40s, continue to diversify your portfolio. So when I speak about life insurance, I don't tell people, hey, get rid of your 401k. No, if you have a 401k and a job and they're matching you, do the match. So if the match is 3%, do the match. That's free money, right? Don't do 10%. That's 7% that you're willing to do. Take that 7% and take that money and, hey, set up a permanent life insurance, so that when you die, your family will get some, get some money. Because the reality is this: a husband passes away prematurely, something happens, he passes away of a heart attack, whatever the case may be. That wife, is she in a position where she can live for the next 5 years? Because I'm sure she was counting on his salary. That may have been a part of their income. How does she cope? How does she deal? Is she going to be able to pay for the mortgage? So that's one, when it comes to like our age, right? Just being mindful of those things. Because I know at our age, in our 40s, death is a very real thing. When you're 18, you're not thinking about death. But in your 40s, you wake up like, death is a real thing, right? Because people are dying around your age. You're like, So if someone is 18, lock in right away.
Forgive me, not to cut you off. What about those who are our age and don't have a 401k? They're working, I'm just going to say regular jobs for lack of a better word. They don't have 401k. They don't have these things. Like I have friends that work at warehouses.
Okay.
So what about someone like that? Before you move on to the teens.
Yeah. That's a great question, man. So someone who doesn't have a 401k, if you don't have a retirement plan, you can use life insurance, a permanent life insurance, and set it up like a retirement plan, and it'll pay you out tax-free for the rest of your life, or until the age of 120. So you set money aside into your policy every month, and you turn it on like a faucet, like at 65 years old, and that'll pay you out annually, tax-free money. That money can't get sued. That money can't get garnished. If you're in a divorce, God forbid, they can't come after that. That money, that is government regulated. That is for you. So for someone who doesn't have a 401k, they don't have diversity right now in a portfolio, life insurance is a really good place to start, because wealthy people use life insurance as their foundation. That's what wealthy people do. And then they have real estate, they have stocks. So those things are all good, but you need a financial foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. Okay, the teens.
So now for the teens, when you're 18, you're much healthier than you are in your 40s, right? Sometimes we're in our 40s, we're getting up off the sofa and we're like, oh, my back is bothering me a little bit. At 18, you don't feel that. You can go out, go to a party, go to work, and still not even yawn.
Break night and everything.
Break night, right? You could start binging on a TV show at 11 p.m. at night, and you'll binge it. After 8 o'clock, for a 40-something-year-old, you yawning. You're like, wait, should I commit to this next hour and a half? Because you laughing. But an 18-year-old will get approved quicker. And not just approved quicker, but more importantly, they're going to lock into a really low rate because of their good health. Yeah. So it's important. So like I said, as early as 1 year old, newborn, 18, you're still young. You start at 18, by the time you're 30, 35, you're set up.
And for our young youth that are watching, what are some of the mistakes that you did? I know you mentioned earlier about the mistakes. Can you speak to that so that they can hear the wisdom inside the experience of making the mistakes?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. When I tell you, I could write a book on mistakes. So I got to a place in my career where we were bringing home $200,000+, well over 200 grand per year. And it felt good. And I was receiving bonuses, and it just felt like, wow. And we were on a high, like I said earlier, like it felt like an income tax check. For those of you who know those income tax checks, oh my gosh, right? So it felt that way every 2 weeks, but we weren't saving and growing, not just saving. We weren't growing our money the right way, but we also weren't saving our money the right way. So more money came in. I got, a 10% raise. I continued to spend more. So I went from one model of a BMW to a more expensive model now. I'm not saving that money the right way. So now I'm living almost check to check, although I'm making more money. So that's a huge mistake. Not having the financial literacy. Again, nobody taught me. It was pretty much school of the hard knocks. I had to learn.
And the thing is, not to cut you, don't lose your thought. You're from the projects.
Yeah.
So, again, you probably like, yo, I made it. I don't have any worries. I'm out the projects. I'm out the hood.
I'm out the hood.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once you feel that, yeah, you made it. I could go into a store and shop for clothes, or, my kids, just, hey, whatever sneakers you want, they had them. It was like, oh, I got it. Cause there's a guaranteed check coming in my mind. There was a guaranteed check coming in 2 weeks, or a bonus. And, we just weren't managing it the right way. So we didn't have a budget. We didn't have a budget set out. I think a budget is really important. Like a literal budget, like open up that Excel doc or whatever app you use and start following your money and seeing where you're spending it at. Because the average person right now spends about $50 a month just on subscriptions alone that they don't even use. Imagine if you took that $50 and you just moved it into a life insurance product. That's uninterrupted compounding interest growing. There's compounding interest, and that happens in the market. But uninterrupted is a totally different ballgame. So I've made mistakes, and I'm still paying for some of those mistakes because the decisions that we make today affect us tomorrow. Let's not get it twisted. So, but I've learned, and you adjust and you continue. You get out that rut. But if you don't have to make the mistake now, man, don't. Follow your money, grow your money, create a budget so that you can have an understanding of where your values really are. Because once you put it on paper, that's when you know where your values really stand.
Indeed. Rebecca, how is it and how was it on the come up managing family life? Being a mom, being a wife, you have this driven husband. How is it as a woman managing it all?
Sometimes it's challenging, right? Because you have the 2 kids, I'm home with the kids, and I appreciated everything that Chino did, working and hustling, and he did the best. Like one thing I always knew is that he wanted to take care of his family. Like, I am going to take care of my family. But there were times that in taking care of the family, it seemed like the family was getting cut short. And it's not, it's not a bad thing, right? On paper, it seems bad. But then when he started to realize, man, this is taken away from this important portion with our children, with us, just spending time. And I started to communicate that. So I'm like, hey, once I internalized it, so I'm like, oh, and we were on we were on a date. It was supposed to be a nice night, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I just start crying because I internalized, and I was holding on to all this, because I knew he was doing something good, so I didn't want to go in and say, "This is horrible. I feel, not seen," or I'm doing all this with the kids. I'm managing the home. I'm cooking. The kids are small. My kids are 13 months apart. So it was like raising Irish twins. So then one night we had a dinner that's supposed to be a nice date night. And I just start crying and kind of just let it all out. And that was the day that we were able to kind of take it by the horns, to say, take what I was going through and what I was feeling and how I'm learning how to manage this and say, this is how I feel. This is what's going on. I appreciate that you're doing this and I see that it's a good thing, but I'm feeling emotionally on empty. And that communication, that from that time forward, we decided we're going to communicate about how we feel, if I'm feeling a certain way, if he's feeling a certain way. And that's how I was able to manage it better.
I love how from a breakdown, there was a breakthrough. And when I ask couples, every time I meet a couple that's been married, for a significant amount of time, I usually ask them like, yo, what's the key? What's the secret? And communication always comes up. And so this is a living, breathing example of how important communication is. And also, I appreciate you answering that question, because my wife and I have had those conversations. Just times that I work, 12 shifts and I'm working weekends and striving to do all these things for us, right? And when she communicates, that the family's being cut short, like, I think, and I know as a man, I'm not alone in this. We feel like, well, I'm doing it for us. So there's like a frustration, and that happens with that. And I just think that, what I've learned is that we're all humans.
Yeah.
We're all experiencing our experiences.
Yeah.
And having feelings. Yeah. And I just think that we just have to, which is what y'all did, just get back into the moment and ground yourself of the purpose and then figure out a way to make it all work, which I think is a perfect segue to what you both do. So you're business partners, but you also counsel other couples.
Yeah.
High school sweethearts.
Yeah.
Married for 2 decades.
Yeah.
So I have a few questions, right?
Okay.
The first thing I'm going to ask you the question. Okay. You've been married for 20 years, high school sweethearts, and I want to hear the masculine and feminine perspective on this. What is the key to a successful, loving marriage?
I want to say it's unconditional love. That's the key. Like, willing to just be there unconditionally, because love is kind. Love is patient. Love keeps no record of wrong. So being able to just, like Rebecca spoke about that moment. I remember that moment. We didn't sit there and say, hey, we're going to be intentional about communication in those words. But we sat there and we started to converse about what life was going to look like moving forward. And one of the things I knew in my heart that I was going to commit to, making sure that I understood where she was at, and that I didn't take it as an attack, or how could you not, or don't you see I'm doing. It was like, all right, I hear her, I see that she's in pain, and my love is going to cover that. And that's, to me, that's where I'm at.
That's wisdom, bro, because I've been that man. Like, doesn't she see me?
Me too.
You think I want to do this?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Me too.
So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Up.
Rebecca?
And then for me, I want to say, like, understanding his strengths and weaknesses. Being together, we've been all together. We've been together for about 26 and a half years. So just understanding his strengths and his weaknesses, and how in his weaknesses, how can I help him? Or how can I be a wife that I need to be? Don't get it. I don't hit it on the head all the time, but understanding who he is as a man, and how can I respect him as a man in my home, so that he could feel love and he could feel nurtured, and we could build this great life together. So understanding his strengths, praising him in his strengths, thanking him for his strengths, but also understanding his weaknesses. And sometimes I get mad with his weaknesses. I'm human. We all human. Like you said, there are times that it's like, oh my goodness. But when I realize and I focus in on the strengths and understand, man, I know this is a weakness in you, and I could love you through this weakness. And sometimes the weakness affects me, but how can I help you? And that's something that I feel like I've learned through the years. It wasn't like overnight. It's like you said, it's going to be 2 decades that we've been married, but just understanding them, being a wife that is supportive, and understanding, man, my husband, he does really love me. And just seeing him in action, seeing him with my children, seeing how he loves my children, how he directs my children, allows me to be a better wife for him, because I appreciate that part of him that brings this family together and helps this family grow, and allows me to be who I am in my womanhood, to say.
That's beautiful. And it reminds me of something that my wife is a therapist, by the way. One of the things that she always reminds me, and she teaches as well, for lack of a better word, is that we also have to be each other's healers. And I had a problem with that at first, because I'm like, nah, you got to heal yourself. You know what I mean? Just like I'm working on myself, you work on yourself. But she talks about how, like, from a complementary perspective, we're with each other, right? And so we are responsible to work with each other's pains and also just see where we can also assist with healing. So I see that. I think, just the way I came up in a very, like, cutthroat, you know what I mean? And just, I think my natural way of just like, I gotta look out for myself, right? And for the most part, my primary of my life, I was the only child. I do have siblings. So it's like just growing up, like, I gotta fend for myself. And that doesn't work in a marriage. And I brought that attitude and that energy into a marriage. So I appreciate you also bringing that perspective up of, like, working with each other, each other's weaknesses, and assisting with, like my wife would say, the healing process.
Yeah, I know that I spoke about my mom and how I didn't speak about her for 20 plus years. Just to give you a little bit of insight, it was one Mother's Day I was ironing clothes, and we celebrate mom on a whole nother level on Mother's Day, right? And she's calling her mom, and I'm ironing clothes because that's like my thing in the house on Sunday mornings as we all getting ready for church. And she just looked at me and she was like, what were your words?
I was like, it's okay to miss your mom.
Yo, I just broke down. I didn't, 20 years, I just broke down. So, like, it resonated when you said the whole, like, we gotta be each other's healers. I don't know if that kind of, but yeah, like, she saw that in me. I was struggling with that silently. And I guess, I was wearing it, but she just said that and I just broke down. And from that moment, healing started to happen in my life.
Wow. Can you say because I think it might have came out a little low, just in case. What did you tell him?
I said, it's okay to miss your mom.
Wow.
And it was a Mother's Day.
Wow. And just the fact that instinctively she knew to say that, and then knew to say that. I think it just speaks volumes to the power of the union and the connection. That's amazing. When you're working with other couples, before I ask that, actually, why do you think relationships, I mean, y'all like old school, high school sweethearts. Like, to me, like, that's like, well, the older generation.
Yeah.
But y'all are not that old, right? So why do you think the divorce rate is so high right now? Like, why doesn't this, which y'all have, exist more?
Yeah, it almost seems.
Both of y'all answer.
Well, I think there's a lot of like a independent, like sometimes women, they have this very independent spirit about them, or this independent attitude, because that's what's taught a lot in society. And there's nothing wrong with being independent. There's nothing wrong with being a strong woman. But when you say yes, and when you make that commitment, you have to sacrifice a bit. You have to bring things down to see how we complement each other, because we are two individuals coming together with different personalities, different ways of thinking, different backgrounds culturally. And now we're coming together and we're going to have to try to make this work. Something attracted us, something brought us together, but now we're here, and there's going to be situations that we have that we just think differently culturally because we were raised different. Like, him and I were raised very different. So how do we get past that? But if I'm so locked into who I am and I'm not willing to move, then we start to separate. We start to grow apart because he don't understand me. But am I trying to understand him? And I think that's what happens sometimes. We get so locked into who we are that we don't bring the walls down to hear who our spouse is, and to come to a common ground. Like, what's the life we're going to build together? Yes, I've been an independent woman. Yes, I've made my own money. Yes, I have my degrees. Yes, I have all this going on. But who am I now with my husband, and what are we going to create together? And I don't know if people are willing to go the distance with that, because that takes work. That's just my interpretation of that.
Powerful. Brother.
She said it.
No, don't try to cower out. No, I want to hear your answer.
I think, like you said, man, we're in this is an anomaly right now. Like, you don't see it too often. And just to kind of piggyback, like, you got to come together intentionally. And right now, divorce is information is at our fingertips. So influence happens at many different levels. And I think what's lacking is that fight. Like we see, hey, this person is with this person and then they're no longer with this person. And it just seems easy, like it just happens, right? And we don't realize, like, subconsciously that's being embedded into the minds of young, impressionable kids. And it's easy. You're in a tough moment and you could bounce. But when you come together, man, in union, man, it's for better or worse. Like I take that for real. Like, yo, we're going to fight through it. We're going to come out of this thing. We're going to be together. We're going to walk this thing through. We're going to long suffer. You name whatever you want to go, but we're going to be intentional about moving forward together. I don't want to be all the way up here and she's here and then I'm complaining why she don't get what I'm doing. If I'm here and she's down here, there's a problem. I'm just slowly growing. If I'm ahead, I'm like, yo, babe, this is why I'm doing this, and I'm walking her through. And then there's times she's a little ahead and she's walking me through, and we just together.
I love that. Wow. You know, I really want to salute you both because I believe that one of our biggest issues in our community is the breakdown of the family. And what I always say in times of war, or you and I were talking about the what's called the African Ma'afa. Ma'afa means the great tragedy, you know, the slavery. One of the first things they did was break up the family. So by y'all being one, it's now not only empowering and important, obviously, but it's almost like an act of war against the agenda of breaking the nuclear family. And so I really salute you both for putting in the work. And I know as a married man, my wife and I are in therapy right now. And one of the things that I've been telling other men is it requires work. And I don't know why. I don't think I was ever taught that. And if I was, I missed that message. I also have to say that I was primarily raised in a single parent household. So I don't know if other people who get that message just see it. I don't know if just saying marriage takes work, I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if you have to experience it and witness it to really be like, okay, marriage takes work. But what I'm saying is that I'm finding that I'm definitely not the only man. We don't know how hard and how tough it really is. And that's not to discourage anyone, but it's about being intentional, making sure you're ready, making sure you have the right tools, and also just be prepared to work.
Yeah.
You know, we read a book, or we're reading a book. It's called Marriage is Not for Punks. Or something like that. You know, a punk is someone who doesn't fight. Yeah. Right? So you definitely have to be ready to fight. Based on your experience, do you see a pattern or consistency of what couples are going through that's causing issues in their marriage? Is there usually there's a formula to success. Mm-hmm. I believe that that's why you mentioned the Rockefellers a lot, right? Mm-hmm. You know, follow their way. That's a formula. Yeah. So I also think that there's a formula to failure as well. Yeah. So is there something that you see that's pretty consistent in what couples are going through and experiencing?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, man, I really think the internet, just social media, is a gift and a curse. And what I mean is, like, pornography is a real thing and it's out there. It's $1 trillion industry. And I think we got to be careful as men, because what we look at for 3 seconds goes from our short-term memory to our long-term. And we're men. You know what I'm saying? We men. And I think then this is, I'm trying to word this maybe politically correct, but I'm just trying. But we see a lot out there, right? And subconsciously, you can start to compare your wife to that. You know, back in the day when we were coming up, you had to like sneak out to like a store 3 miles away and buy a VHS porn, right? Mm-hmm. But now it's at your fingertips.
Or you'll find like somebody's stash somewhere.
Somebody's stash, or you went to 42nd Street and you're like, oh snap, they got peep shows, right? But now it's right on your device. Any age. And that's a gateway, man, to tragedy, because now you bringing that stuff into your home. And many men, you know, even celebrities have spoken about the detriment of this. But I believe like that right there, man, is it's a huge disservice, man, to men who are trying to be the best husband they could be, because that can be a silent battle. And if that's not taken care of, tragedy. Meaning, and when I say tragedy, I use that extreme word because in divorce, in separation, that's tragic, man, because the family is separated. I was sharing this with my son the other day. I said, you don't understand what happened in the 90s. There were men who were ripped from their families. They were put in prison. Black men were put in prison because of a 3-strike law. They were smoking weed, and now they doing 10 years. You got a young man growing up without a father. I said, you don't understand what that did. And I have these real conversations with my kids, and just to kind of just to kind of speak about, like, listen, man, pornography is doing the same, you know, not the same, but it's destroying families. Yeah. Like, it's crazy. So I believe that's detrimental right there.
What about you, Rebecca?
It's understanding the covenant of marriage. People is like, oh, it's a great idea. It's good. I love this person. Been with them all this time. And then just really, when you're there, the covenant of marriage, we made a covenant. We said, like we spoke about earlier, for better or for worse. So sometimes the covenant of it, they don't want the worst part. They just want the better part. So when worse comes and hits the ground in your marriage, 5 years in, 3 years in, you didn't expect some things you didn't expect, and it's easier just to say it's okay, and it's so praised, or it's so normal. Like, divorce is, we have been desensitized, so it's okay. It's okay. It just didn't work out. It's okay. It's we just weren't on the same page. We thought we were, and I think that's what happens, and that's where the breakdown is. Why divorce sometimes is divorce now is such at a high rate, because it's okay. It was the worst part. We couldn't get through it. It's okay. We have different opinions, but if you just understand the covenant of marriage, because it's going to take, like we said earlier, it's going to take work, and just bringing that in. Hey, this is a hard moment, and I said for better or for worse, and how can we do this? Or how can I change my way of thinking to reciprocate to my husband love and grace during a hard moment, and he could reciprocate the same thing. So I think just the art of that, the art of love, to say, is lost in marriages now, because, like he says, social media has desensitized us to really what a marriage is, and it's okay to leave. It's okay to walk away when things get tough.
Wow. I want you both to look at your camera, and what tips or advice would you offer a young married couple and single men and women who are dating? You know, what advice would you offer them?
Yeah, for a young married couple, my advice is stick to the course. Continue to support one another. Continue to just walk together in everything. Communicate. Be open and transparent with one another. Not just because some people say, well, I'm just going to be me and I'm going to say what I feel. Be careful in saying what you feel. There's tonality. Make sure that you understand, or you try to understand, how your spouse receives the information. Your tone is important. Body language is important. So communicate with the heart to restore. Restoration is key. For the young person who's dating, right now, this is a difficult time. I don't come from this era. Like, the way you date now is you start off on a DM. But you know what? What if you're dating? Listen, you date with an expectation of where is this going, and you learn that person. Enjoy, have fun, go out to the movies, do things that we did that may be corny to you. Go out on dates so that you can get to know how that person is. How is that person around their family? How does that person treat? How does that dude treat his mom? Like little things like that. How does she treat her dad? Like, so that you can get to know culturally, like Rebecca shared earlier, culturally, like how they've come up. And like I said, communication is key.
Rebecca?
Yeah, for a young couple, just coming up is understanding each other, be patient, be hopeful for your future. Know that it's going to work out, that you said yes, you got to know this person. And like it's repeated over and over, but communication and just being open about your feelings. Like Chino said, tonality is everything. So maybe if you have to take a minute, if you need to decompress before you express your feelings and not express it angrily till you get to a place of explosion and you feel like it can't get past that. But just be patient with each other for a young couple, because there's a lot to learn and you're still learning each other. Marriage is just the next step from dating. Now is marriage is just the next step. So it's a new level of learning. And for the singles that are like maybe looking for somebody, ask questions. Ask, what do they believe? What do they think about money? Do they want to have a family? How soon do they want to have a family? What's their career outlook? So you can see if you're on the same page. So you're not finding yourself hitting a wall if you go there or if you've already invested all these feelings and emotions. But just kind of understand the person you're with, because now, like Chino said, it's hard. Everything's through a DM. Everything's like very surface. Go deep. I just say go deep with the person that you're interested in, so you could know what you're getting into when you take the next step of marriage.
I love it. Chino, what's your favorite book?
Oh man, I have a few. I'm gonna go. I was gonna go with the like Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I'm gonna switch it up, because Rich Dad Poor Dad is a really good one for me, but 3 Feet from Gold may be the one that like, because I'm a storytelling guy, and I like the way it was in story mode. But the whole message, just if that person would have just took a little longer, that person's life would have changed. But they were 3 feet from gold, man. I could go on about it. But
Rebecca, what's yours?
I have a book probably no one ever heard of, and it just like really changed my mind. It just changed everything. It was called No More Faking Fine. And for me as a woman, sometimes faking fine is just the normal thing to do. You have kids, so yeah, life is great. Yeah, marriage is great. Yeah, everything is good. And you're not really feeling and having those emotions. So No More Faking Fine really helps you break down and let you know that it's okay to feel all the feels. It's okay to feel like motherhood is hard. It's okay to feel like being a wife is hard. You don't have to fake it. So it's called No More Faking Fine. And I just loved it because it just opened up my emotional side of motherhood, of being a wife, of being a woman, of just transformation and change in that journey. So no more faking fine. I like that.
Chino, you and I were having a conversation about transparency, right? And that's something else too that I would say that I adopt is, if you ask me how I'm doing, depending on who you are, right? Because people use "how are you" as a greeting, even though it's a question. Yeah. But depending, like, I'm going to keep it real. I'm like, I'm not doing well right now. Mm-hmm. So that's something else. Like, so I believe in that. Like, yeah, man, just keeping it real within reason,
right
when
people,
it's appropriate and the right people. With that being said, I just really want to thank you both for coming on the Raw Success Podcast, talking about your journey, dropping so many gems about the mindset and life and overcoming adversity, the corporate world, marriage, everything. And I just, like I said, I want to reiterate that I really salute you on everything that you're doing. You're an amazing couple. You're a beautiful couple. And tell the world how they can find you and hire your services.
Yeah, so you want to start?
With marriage, we have a podcast called Growing Up Married. It kind of just speaks about our journey, things that we've overcome, things that we've spoke about. So that's called Growing Up Married on all streaming platforms. And then we have our business, Upward Capital Group. So you could just go on upwardcapitalgroup.org, and any services that you need, you could schedule an appointment, and we would love to speak to you. We do financial literacy, so we teach you how money grows. We want you to make an educated decision. We don't want you just to, like you said, off the hip. We want you to know what you know.
And yeah, you can find me, Chino Arboleda on Instagram, and that I'm across all platforms. Chino Arboleda, one word, and
I'm Rebecca Unplugged.
Rebecca Unplugged, and like she said, growing up married, we're not on YouTube just yet, but we are on all streaming platforms.
Let's get it. Raw success. Subscribe, share, boom.